Hey there, everybody. Welcome to our Fargo Season 5, Episode 4 reaction and review. I want to get on my chef hat. I want to get
Oh,
on my bib. I want to go into the kitchen here because I want to watch John Hamm cook.
I know, right?
Let this man bake a souffle. Let him, put some steaks on the grill. Incredible performance by Hamm. Like, the final 5 minutes of this. Roy Tillman may be the scariest character I've seen on TV this year, and he can be very, very funny, but that's what makes him so nuanced. He's just like so cold, so ruthless. Like, Don Draper's a jerk. This
Yeah.
guy is way scarier than Don Draper. This guy, like, legitimately, like, I think he could do almost anything. I think he would kill his own son, Gator, in a split second and barely care.
In a second.
Yeah,
I mean, we're going to get into some theories now that there's been more confirmation on the show about stuff, like the fact that he's had three wives. The first two have disappeared, and we know where Dot is, and she's the second wife. So, where's that first wife? Tinfoil hat. He killed her. She is
yeah.
absolutely dead.
And it all, of course, introduces the big question now of, is Dot Gator's mom? And of course,
Mm.
that is something we have to talk about. There's been plenty of theorizing about that over this past little
Oh
while.
my goodness, people been getting into full on fights with each other over this.
Yeah,
It's not that deep, guys. It's
no,
not that deep.
there have been people who are spending way too much time on like the Wikipedia of like trying to figure out ages of certain people because somehow it is impossible for actors to play older or younger or whatever than their actual age.
Also, let's just have a reminder that Wikipedia and IMDb are not reliable sources because anybody can edit those. For a while, it said that Jenna Marbles was like 7'1" or something like that, that her fans went and edited her Wikipedia page because she made a song that was, I Want to Be Tall. And so they made her tall. So, take Wikipedia and IMDb with a grain of salt. Sometimes it's right, sometimes it's fans making Jenna Marbles 7 feet tall.
Okay, so before we do go further here, we have Fargo live streams every week talking all about the show. It's a really good time. We can't just restrict ourselves to discussing this show once a week. We got to find a way to sort of keep that momentum going. That is a great way to be a part of the discussion and also support the channel at the same time. We really appreciate everybody who does join our Patreon.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun to dive deep into this show. I mean, we've had so many good discussions here with you guys in the comments, and live stream is a great way for you guys to connect with us and ask us your questions about Fargo and everything that's going on with the show. Okay, let's get into the biggest question.
Mhm.
Like I said, I see people throwing down over this question whether or not is Dot Gator's mom. Because if she is the second wife,
Mhm.
she could be a stepmom. And she absolutely can be. That's a possibility. It's interesting, though, that a lot of people have been like, okay, Juno Temple, who's the actress, is 34 years old. And that seems to be the basis of a lot of argument that's out there. And we're just going to kind of throw that out the window because it truly doesn't matter how old Juno is or isn't, anyways.
Yeah.
What matters is how old is Dot? And when we saw her wedding photo to Roy, she looked like a child. Like,
Mhm.
she looked like a teen bride, like really, really, really young.
Yeah.
That I was just like, oh, ew. But I mean, Roy's that kind of guy. So that was kind of like my first clue that she could be Gator's mom. Because if they got married where she was like, I don't know, really young, like 16, 17, something like that.
Yeah.
Let's say Dot's about 37, which is kind of around where I think she is, like between 36 and 38, something like that. Gator looks like he's like 20 years old. So the math works out. And then we had in this episode a little bit of smoke on that, but it was still kind of ambiguous enough
Mhm.
that's like, man, is she a stepmom or is she a mom? Because that whole first scene where, they're all dressed up night before Christmas, going through a house, and you see Gator actually pick up this picture of Wayne and Dot and Scotty where they're all, they're hugging their daughter. And even though he has a mask on, you can see it in his body language that he feels like betrayed in
Mhm.
a way, like sad, like something that was supposed to be his life but wasn't. So at first I was like, oh, okay, maybe he is actually her biological son. And then later, when they do have a bit of a confrontation where she's like, shame on you, Gator, there's a baby in this house. He's like, yeah, I know. I saw the picture. She was talking to him like she was his mom. Then you've got him saying out this line where she's like running and hiding, where he says, where are you, mama? It's time to go home. I've had two stepmothers. I'm from Canada. I've never called them mom or mama. It might just be something from that region that if you're a stepmom, that you would call your stepmom mom or mama,
Mhm.
which is typically, words that are reserved for your mom, like your mom, the person who raised you or had been raising you. And for me, I really hope that she's actually his biological mom, because I think that that would make for a much more layered, really deeply traumatic storyline where if Dot felt that she had to leave, like felt in danger, like Roy's first wife is buried kind of danger, and she couldn't get away with her son, that would be something then of why Gator would be like, yeah, you know what? Sometimes I'll call her mom, sometimes I'll call her Nadine, because maybe he's trying to like pull away from her. He's got resentment, anger, abandonment issues. Like, how could you do this to me? Like, I could have had maybe a different life if you had taken me too, but you didn't. So now you're going to pay for what you did to me by leaving me here with Roy. Thanks a lot. Like, it's very complicated, and I think it makes it a little bit different if she's a stepmom.
I I'm going into this with this idea of what matters the most to me as a viewer is what was the emotional connection between those two? Because I think
Mhm.
regardless of
Mhm.
if, they are mother and son or, it's the stepmother and stepson, I
Mhm.
think it's really about how Gator saw Dot.
Mhm.
And to me, I kind of have this idea going into it of okay, like what if this is a situation where she is just a stepmom, but
Mhm.
Gator saw her as the one good person who was in his life.
Mhm.
And, because we already know what Roy is like, and he might have thought for however long that Dot was around, and we already recognize that it wasn't like she was there that long. She left more than 10 years ago, as
Mhm.
established on the show. So in her mind, it may not be like she knew Gator all that long, but for Gator, maybe she was around in the most formative years of his life and she represented, okay, this is my way out. This is why I am really so desperate to have this person back, why I miss her, why
Mhm.
I'm so hurt by her. Like, I
Mhm.
will admit, I've never heard somebody call a stepmother mom, but I have heard people call their stepfather's dad. And I think a lot of it just sort of comes down to, what's the emotional connection there? When did they enter
Mhm.
your life? What's that
Mhm.
sort of dynamic? And I can see it working really either way, but I think for Dot, she's clearly learned to compartmentalize her life in a lot of ways, where she has moved forward from Roy because she had to move forward from Roy. And I think because of that, she's created this sort of wall in her mind where she can look at Gator and say something like, shame on you, Gator, there's a baby in the house, and say that in a way that's just not like, you know, it's my son is here, and yet I have to chastise my son. She has to look at him like he's any other person. But for Gator, he can't look at her that way, regardless of that
Mhm.
relationship, just because of what he clearly she clearly meant to him. Like I'm taking away that he found a lot of value in her, regardless of what that is, based on what we're actually seeing.
100%. I mean, step parents can come in a really big way that has huge meaning. I have a very deep relationship with my stepmom, and even though I don't call her mom or mama,
Mhm.
she's very influential in my life. She's an angel. I absolutely love her, and if she was around during my formative years and then just left, it would have been really hard on me. So whether Dot is a stepmom or a mom, I think you're right that she would have been there during some very formative years, because if she's been gone about 10 years and he's about 20, that's around 10. And that's a pretty formative point of your life where you're kind of just moving out of being like a, a young kid into kind of getting closer to being a teenager where you're the most influenced, right? So it's a very complicated thing, but you guys let us know in the comments. Stepmom, biological mom, who is Dot to Gator?
One thing I will say regardless, I love Gator. I am still hashtag Gator gang. I love this character. He is not a great person. I'm not going to sit here and say that he is.
He's complicated.
Yeah, he's complicated. He's really interesting. I think Joe Keery's playing him really, really well.
Yeah.
This is I can see this show being a season that's slowly all about the whittling away of Roy Tillman, because he's the sort of guy who has been enabled by society, by voters. We know we're in the middle of an election here that's coming up, that he has to have his eye on that quote unquote prize, but he is somebody who has been authorized basically by everybody around him that he can do whatever he wants at all times. He's never really faced any sort of consequences.
And then comes in definite sane person Munch over to his house, all covered in blood. And I was pretty worried that something was going to happen to his twins or his third wife or something. But the twins seem okay. There's just some kind of symbol written on the wall. And, the creator of the show has come out to say sort of what the backstory of Munch is, because we were kind of talking and theorizing, is he a sin eater? Is he a soul absorber? Because it wasn't exactly clear if he was eating sins or he was actually taking the soul from this man, and he was sort of, immortal, going from life to life, taking the same soul throughout. But it's turned out that he is a sin eater.
Yeah, and I do not know a lot about sin eaters. I will make this very clear. I am not a sin eater, so I cannot comment on Old Munch's moral code here, but I do believe he has one, and I do believe there's a certain order of things that he has to follow. And yes, it's true that Fargo has done weird supernatural sort of things before over the years, and I'm fine with old Munch being definitely old Munch and being a sin eater. That's fine with me, as long as you sort of incorporate and loop it into the story so that he's not just this total outlier who takes away from the rest of the show. I thought it worked better in this episode than it did in episode 2, because I felt like his role within the context of everybody else is a little bit more grounded. I see his symbology as a sort of warning, as sort of a step towards what else could be coming, because we've already seen, a great sin happen here, in that Munch was not properly told about the job, and because of all of this, there is something else that is going to be done. But what is that going to be? It feels like Munch has made his move, and now it's time for Roy to make some sort of move back. And this, like you said, this is not the sort of character Roy is used to dealing with.
Yeah, and it was a very interesting move that Roy decided to make, because it doesn't exactly fix his problem, which is that Munch is still out there and could still do something. But he wanted to make sure that Munch was kind of off the police radar. He doesn't want anybody looking for him anymore. So he kind of set up that, we saw that couple at the beginning when we first met Roy sitting at the diner. It's not a good situation. And he's gone over and killed that husband and is like, you guys all saw it. This is Munch. It needs to be off the radar. Yeah. Police need to stop looking for him. It was, a good, clean kill. You guys are my witnesses. Right, Lenore? This poor woman. I was like, oh my goodness, she hasn't been through enough.
Yeah. And then he's just on top of it. He basically gives his version of, a Lannister always pays his debt. Right? He's got his own sort of slogan there. It's just okay, Roy, this is not your campaign right now. You're not campaigning to the widow of this guy you just murdered. And yes, this it's been established is not exactly a great husband, but still, you murdered him.
It's not his choice. And she did say that she still wanted him to be there.
Yeah, it's just Roy is just a complete lunatic. He
Oh
is
my
so
goodness.
empowered by everybody else to think that he is the right and left hand of the law. There's no need for an actual book because the laws or whatever are in his head. And he gets away with it. But this idea that could Dot find a way to get through to Gator? And could Gator find a little bit more of peace or separation with this
Mm-hmm.
person who was in his life at some point? You've got this going on. Then you've also got the investigation into Roy Tillman that
Mm-hmm.
is being attempted by the feds. I'm not going to say that this is actually going to work. It's being attempted by the feds.
Yeah.
And so all of this is going. And then on top of all this, we add in the fact that we've got at least Wit starting to figure out some
Mm-hmm.
things when it comes to Dot, which led to another just really incredible scene where he's just like, "You were there," and she's just like, "No, I wasn't. No, you were there. No, I wasn't." It's like, okay, you have evidence, Dot. How long are you gonna do this?
Yeah, it was. I wasn't sure how she was really going to get out of this. Like, we had this whole scene with Gator and, his crew at the house, and Dot was able to get out with Scotty and Wayne, but not before Wayne touched one of her traps and electrocuted himself. So he's in the hospital.
Yeah.
And she's been able to convince Scotty, listen, this is what we're going to tell everybody happened. And, Scotty's like, okay, no problem. Like, that's what we'll do, kind of thing. And they're trying to do their best, but I mean, Wayne remembers a lot of what's going on. He even calls her Nadine, where
Yeah.
she's trying to be like, oh, listen, you know what? You electrocuted yourself. Your brain's a little fried. Don't worry. Nadine is nobody. It was just an accident. Everything's all good. And it's just like, how long can she go on like this? I was actually kind of expecting when we got into this episode Wayne not to be hiding up in the attic, but I had actually thought this might be the episode where Dot just comes clean and was like, okay, listen, this is what is going on. Here's a very sort of quick rundown. We need to work together as a family to stop this from happening because, like, Wayne would absolutely have her back. And it would have been nice to see Wayne be able to have the opportunity to step in and help her.
I think she's making a mistake. I think she's making a mistake for a reason, though, that she thinks is right. I think she feels so protective of Wayne that she's really worried of what's going to happen if Wayne gets mixed up into all of this. But she should tell Wayne because, number one, Wayne will understand. He clearly loves her. He loves her enough to be with her despite the fact that his mother hates every single thing about her. Like,
he's already mixed up in it.
Yeah.
I mean, like, stop. Even Gator was telling his crew, like, find the husband, find the kid.
There's nothing bad that's going to come from getting him informed at this point. Unless you think he's going to be so terrified that he's going to run away. He's already terrified. Like,
she might be afraid that he's going to tell his mom, but I think that with something like this, Wayne would keep it to himself. I do.
I think so too. And yeah, you have other things to worry about when it comes to, Lorraine and the family and Danish and what all of them are going to do. But you have to sort of, if Dot has been able to compartmentalize her past and her present and whatever her relationship is with Gator, she's got to be able to figure out how to do the same thing with Wayne in relation to the rest of Wayne's family. I think she will get there. I just think the question is, when will she get there and will it be too late? Because I do think somebody's going to die before this season is over. I hope it's not Wayne because I like Wayne, but I'm a little bit worried about Wayne. I feel like it's more likely to be Lorraine because I just feel like this show's going to do some sort of like epic, absolutely bonkers death with her.
As long as it's not Dana. She can't take away Dave Foley, please.
I'm not even going to suggest that because I feel like then you were going to set up some like Home Alone trap on me in the middle of this video where I'm just going to get like pied in the face or something. I still really enjoyed this season. I think this episode it's a little bit of a step up from episode 3 to me. This is kind of right back online with the first two. It's funny, but it's also really, really scary. And they've established a great villain, somebody to root against.
And it's nice that we have a villain that's not just all powerful at this point. He was when we first met him, but things are unraveling. Like he's got the FBI after him, Munch is after him as well, as coming into his home, basically threatening his family. Like and he's still trying to find Dot. Like and in the middle of an election, like there's so much stuff going on for him, on top of him being this villain looking for Dot. Like it's very complicated. It's nice.
Yeah, it's messy, but it's very, very fun. This is a very enjoyable season. We love talking about it. We hope you guys join our Patreon for weekly Fargo live streams so that you guys can talk about it with us too.
Yeah.
Thank you to our patrons for your support. We'll see you here next time.